pertanyaan yang tajam buat tamu kita hari ini. Ini udah punya.
Oke, wow, semangat sekali ya hari ini ya. Selamat siang semuanya. Baru makan kok lesu ya. Selamat siang semuanya. Ya, saya ingin mengucapkan terima kasih ya untuk para tamu sini. Wow, tadi juga saya ada apa? Baru main Pokemon kan, lagi nyari unicorn juga di sini ya. Kok rasanya unicornnya makin dekat ya? Ya kita campur aja bahasa Indonesia bahasa Inggris. Thank you untuk tadi untuk kami. Untuk on time itu ada Gojek ya. Untuk Dani juga CEO Traveloka dan juga Wenas ya CEO Matahari Mall. Ya menarik. Mungkin pertanyaan pertama saya pengen ini ya tanya ke tiga panelis di sini kita yang awesome banget ya. Jujur susah banget ya untuk dapat waktu mereka ya. Karena bahkan tuh percaya nggak sih susah nggak untuk dapat waktu mereka duduk di panggung? Susah kan? Nah makanya manfaatin nih sekarang nih ya. Nah pertanyaan pertama, kesan pertama Anda gimana soal temuan ini tentang Google Temasek ini? Kesannya apa? Tentang kami pas baca, pas tahu tentang riset ini, apa kesan pertamanya? Terlalu kecil, terlalu besar, kurang agresif gimana ya? Yang tadi gimana?
Kalau saya baru nyampe sih pakai Gojek, lihat belum sempat lihat kemana lagi. Tadi agak telat masuk, tapi ya impressionnya adalah presentasinya Tony, which I thought was very very exciting for everyone. So that was my first impression.
Great.
Dennis gimana?
Ya, ketika dulu kita mulai tahun 2012, kita tahu ini bakalan lumayan besar marketnya, tapi tidak tahu persisnya berapa besar. Kalau lihat angka-angka yang tadi, kelihatannya lumayan besar juga. Tapi satu view yang kita share itu kita akan selalu grow, marketnya akan selalu grow, dan ada opportunity di sana.
Kalau dari saya, it's actually very positive because the last report that we've seen was done on December 2015, and this report has actually shows better numbers. So that means it's actually growing faster than what was researched before. Yeah, and I also say that in MatahariMall.com as a part of the e-commerce industry, we're very fortunate. Karena tadi angkanya di-share-kan growth year on year-nya kita mungkin base-nya paling kecil, jadi growth-nya masih paling gede. So it's very happy. 39% year on year for next 10 years. That's no complaint.
Tapi ya, ada faktor yang lain yang Anda lihat sebagai pendorong buat ini pertumbuhannya, dan mungkin ada yang perlu disebut contohnya kelas menengah, lalu ya, kecepatan internet, ada yang lain di sini Anda lihat sebagai faktor penting juga yang perlu dipertimbangkan.
The logistics, payments, so I think those. Jadi ekosistemnya itu sekarang. Kalau dulu kan yang didigitalkan itu baru jualannya gitu kan. Terus sekarang tiba-tiba let's say logistiknya juga mulai didigitalkan, then like the payment also ada sekarang lagi banyak nih fintech masuk and digitalisasi, jadi semua itu jadi digital, jadi lebih cepat lagi gitu. So that's how we see it.
Yeah. Di bidang online travel gimana? Kalau soal payment?
Untuk payment kita melihat tadi lumayan berkaitan sama yang namanya consumer trust. Jadi ketika kita sudah dapat consumer trust terhadap brandnya, yang itu didapat dari kemampuan kita untuk deliver produk dan service yang bagus dan experience yang bagus ke customer kita. Kita lihat itu yang akan mendorong consumer kita untuk melakukan payment secara online di Traveloka.
Nah, kalau yang menarik ini saya pengen tahu nih dari Nadine nih, untuk Gojek sendiri lihatnya gimana nih pertumbuhan ini tuh pasti banyak hal dong, kayak Gojek sendiri kan inovasi bukan online card doang, tapi sudah sekarang macam-macam. Saya sendiri ini ya pengguna Gojek ya, nih sudah ada GoPay juga ya. Nah, gimana menurut Nadine sendiri dengan angka yang tadi bahwa online card Indonesia itu akan nomor 1 di Southeast Asia, dan apa saja sih yang mendorong hal-hal itu ke depannya 10 tahun kemudian?
Kalau menurut saya udah jelas bahwa online ride di Indonesia bakal paling besar. Itu nggak mengagetkan karena transportation is a function of population, ya, so make sense. Tapi yang saya mungkin kurang setuju adalah size of the marketnya. Jadi pasti ada assumption itu, karena dari semua vertical online, tidak ada consumer adoption yang paling absolut dan paling irreversible daripada transportasi. Ya, not even e-commerce. Dan orang masih belanja di toko segala gitu. Tapi if you look around the world, I'm not talking about Gojek, I'm just talking about general right transport. There has never been a shift faster and more permanent than online transportation, because people never go back. Literally, they never go back after you become an app user. Then that's pretty much what you become. So I believe that penetration rate will be among the biggest, right? Absolutely, e-commerce will be by far the biggest market, right? For sure, it will still be way bigger than ride-hailing transport. But the fastest adoption from offline to online will be first transportation, and number 2, food. The third is being debated right now. It could be payments. We don't know. But I think food and transportation is the first offline to online transition that is very fast. Very fast.
Setuju nggak?
Setuju nggak?
Well, it's a different industry, so I never led a Gojek or a similar business like Gojek. So, but what I can say is that for e-commerce, I think Indonesia has a unique position because for the island, itu apa, kepulauan, negara kepulauan, archipelago infrastructure, right? Jadi kalau misalnya di China, di India, bahkan di US, you know, that's when online takes over, offline slows down.
Yes.
That's what we've seen, right? But in Indonesia, it's with the archipelago atau negara kepulauan ini, it's online and offline. I believe, and then what we've seen with our own numbers, since we have kan ada mataharimall.com, terus ada Matahari Department Stores, ada hypermarts, both can grow. That's in Indonesia. That's unique in Indonesia. So that's I think what I can share.
Tapi memang menarik ya, soalnya kalau Indonesia kan sering dibandingkan Indonesia 2-3 years behind India, behind China. Tapi memang India, China, even US itu Brazil itu dia one big continent. Ya, Indonesia is more like archipelago. Nah, tapi itu gimana overcome those challenges? Ada opportunity tapi juga ada challenges juga kan. Nah, menurut mungkin dari sisi travel sih nggak masalah ya, tapi dari sisi Gojek, dari sisi e-commerce gimana?
I think for travel, it's in fact an opportunity, right? It's a really big opportunity.
Bahkan kargo aja pakai pesawat gitu.
Ada kapal, actually. Kalau gue pesawat, kalau gue pikir-pikir, semua permasalahan, apapun permasalahan dengan infrastruktur, payment, archipelago, logistik, itu sebenarnya semua represent an opportunity for every single one of our verticals. It's actually a net positive thing. Okay, so let's go through them one by one. So e-commerce, for example, the fact that sometimes it doesn't make economic sense for you to invest in a mall or a department store in a particular village or an island lends itself naturally to e-commerce, right? Which is why you're seeing in e-commerce right now, there's a big outside of Java market, probably one of the fastest growing, right?
Yeah, it's actually, in fact, let's say, I shared numbers with some of the media a month ago. Our before and after Lebaran, spikes-nya itu 10 kota, top 10 kota itu bukan Jakarta, by value or by transactions. So number 1 by value is actually Magelang. Number 1 by transaction actually Batu. Wow, it's dekat Malang gitu. And then it's like I've seen this number. Oh wow.
And that I bet that number would be radically different if there was a Senayan City in Magelang, right? Or or multiple retail outlets. So for travel, it's amazing, right? Because basically the middle class grows. What is the first big chunky disposable thing that they do with their money? They do it to travel. Okay, so this is already amazing for travel. For Gojek's actually solving 2 of the big pain points, right? Outside of its transportation, which is fundamentally an urban thing, the structure of the Indonesian economy lends itself so that Gojek's plan is to empower e-commerce using the 2 things that's kind of a little bit broken now. One is payments through GoPay. Number 2 is logistics through all kinds of vehicles, right? Delivery. So what we plan to do is we supply the arms to the e-commerce race that is happening. So that's our strategy. So all these problems in Indonesia, that's what makes Indonesia such a big opportunity, I think. Not so everyone complains about the challenge. I just think the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity.
So you think these numbers are actually conservative?
I think so.
Yeah, so I think it's like as Ty from Temasek said, right, it doesn't include a lot of different sectors. Right?
Exactly.
It's a first-hand gains.
Personally also I think it's conservative karena yang kita lihat tuh angka itu kita nggak masuk kayak disruption. Maybe like in the next 5 years, 3 years there's any disruption, I don't know. I mean from technology, maybe there will be I don't know like machine learning, AI. So this is basically building from like a macroeconomic, like disposable income growing, middle class growing. Yeah, maybe it's conservative.
Like if you ask my engineers about the inflection curve, they think it's going to happen in the next 4 to 5 years, right? When that point of algorithmic exponentiality where we can't even figure out how fast our own technology is moving it. So if you ask an engineer, they'll give you a much more aggressive answer than that.
Exactly.
Case in point, case in point, 10 tahun yang lalu kita nggak tahu bahwa akan ada smartphone revolution yang sekarang lagi terjadi.
Nah, untuk Traveloka sendiri, ini menarik ya. Tadi Nadine ada bilang kalau untuk travel mah arti mah opportunity. Nah, tapi kan kalau saya lihat travel itu in terms of consumers kan disposable income. Biasanya kan mereka ada budgeting nih. Kalau sudah habis sekali mereka nggak akan travel lagi. Misalnya sudah budgeting, oke mungkin pas season tertentu saya akan berangkat. Nah, tapi kalau e-commerce kan lebih recurring. Apakah benar seperti itu?
Terutama kalau di Indonesia karena arsitek lagu, jadi selain kebutuhan leisure, ada kebutuhan commuting juga.
Oke.
Jadi untuk leisure itu yang nantinya akan naik terus kalau selaras dengan disposable income seperti disebutkan nanti sebelum. Untuk leisure itu yang bisa dibangun dan bekerjasama dengan tourism di Indonesia untuk destinasi-destinasi lokal di Indonesia. Actually ya di Southeast Asia harusnya secara turisme harusnya justru Indonesia yang menjadi destinasi turis-turis dari mancanegara. Ya, jadi masih ada opportunities.
Kalau kita lihat targetnya pemerintah untuk 20 juta orang tahun 2019, itu realistis menurut Anda? Misalnya overseas tourist?
Kalau melihat angkanya secara absolut, tapi kalau yang kita lihat both dari turisme yang masuk ke Indonesia maupun dari turisme Indonesia yang keluar internasional bank traveling itu angkanya naiknya lumayan cepat ya dari tahun ke tahun.
And Nadine, you mentioned engineers before, which is obviously on our last slide about challenges. Tell us about some of the challenges with talent and engineering, some of the challenges all of you as kalau bisa share sedikit mengenai challenge itu.
I think I speak for everyone here, and that is absolutely the number one challenge of any tech company. It's the hardest thing to find engineering talent, specifically back-end engineering talent, actually, to be more specific. I mean, there's a lot of mobile talent here, but there's not enough back-end architects, basically, in Indonesia. And I feel very strongly about this. There's no way you can teach this art. All of this is learned through apprenticeship models. Like, as much as you watch YouTube videos or join as many seminars as possible, you're not going to learn this unless you're sitting side by side with a coder doing it together. Coding is one of the most beautiful things that I've learned about coding is that it's an artistic process. It's actually a very artistic form of expression that requires apprenticeship. So what I think is the solution is open the floodgates. Let every single engineer from anywhere in the world, send them over here and have them mix and mingle with all the Indonesian, have them teach, have them join companies and also mentor the young generations from India, from China, from the Valley, etc. and have them exposed to the next generation of engineers in Indonesia. That's the only way, I think. You want to set up a school, it'll take you 5 years and then it can only spit out 300 a day. You can't. You want to get scale, you bring in armies of engineers over here and you coach directly all these students, and then the government should provide all kinds of incentives for taking coding and computer science, etc. It's actually not that complicated of a roadmap. It's just, I don't think there's enough political will yet to make that happen in such a very big scale. especially even when members of my engineering team still get stopped at immigration every time coming in and out. So it's a problem. It's a really big problem.
Mas Harimau ada pengalaman yang sama?
Belum kita. Jadi kalau misalnya kita so it's like we are open for, let's say, hiring every engineers out there. But right now, let's say we're still prioritizing the local talents over others for the time being. Gitu. Karena kita masih bisa cari, bisa nemu. Dan we also, let's say, in our tech and in our marketing, uniquely, I think, compared to others, is we hire a lot of fresh grads, and then we teach them from scratch. I think the concept is very similar. So it's about followerships, and then how to actually build them from scratch. Jadi kalau misalnya kita hire, for example, marketing itu, kita hire dari agency atau mana itu, they have a different mindsets of marketing. And then I think e-commerce marketing, like each and every one of us, is performance marketing, right? It's not the branding marketing where usually, okay, give me the budget, I'll split it across the different channels. So that's different, right? I mean, we have cost per orders, customer acquisition cost, and then ROI. So we have such concept which we track on very meticulously on a daily basis or even on an hourly basis gitu. Jadi benar-benar kayak dipirit-pirit gitu. Yang penting ROI-nya bagus gitu kan.
Dari engineer ada berapa banyak di Traveloka?
Nggak tahu. Dan perasaan kalau Traveloka tahu saya semua itu engineers, even like finance, semua engineers ya. Terus bahkan orang SPB engineers ya. Nggak tahu. Dennis sendiri dia makanya dia bilang, saya ini scientific marketers dia bilang. Jadi engineers. Nah, itu gimana, bisa cerita nggak?
I think we are quite lucky on the engineering side. So we think the behavior of the engineers is engineers yang strong biasanya mau join kelompok engineering yang strong juga. Karena apa? Mungkin salah satunya karena tadi ada learning yang hanya bisa didapatkan dengan sit down side by side. Dan dari awal kita beruntung karena tim awal kita lumayan strong dari sisi engineering, dan kita juga berusaha setiap hari untuk bikin culture engineering yang strong, kemudian untuk hiring the best talents, termasuk mendatangkan orang-orang Indonesia yang tadinya diaspora keluar, udah belajar, sekarang kita masukin ke dalam. Itu untuk dari engineering side. Untuk dari marketing, performance marketing, digital marketing side, kita juga punya program-program untuk acceleration. Di antaranya kita sekarang lagi ongoing, kemarin opening sama Hindi. Kita kerja sama Google, kita bikin International Analytics Development Program, di mana kita hire the best graduates dari top schools di Southeast Asia. Jadi kita ambil dari Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, dan Philippines. Karena di sini Traveloka tidak hanya represent Indonesia, tapi juga represent Southeast Asia.
Yeah. So talking about
Sorry, I just wanted to. So I was talking on a macro level, right? 70% of Gojek, I just want to clarify, 70% of Gojek engineers are all Indonesian, and they're top notch. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, as a macro, as an industry, the quickest way for us to actually get to that next level super quickly is actually by creating porous borders, sending Indonesians out, coming back, or sending experts from outside. So that was the assertion.
Assimilation program gitu kan.
Yeah, send them out. So for example, we sent 3 of our super guys, Indonesian engineers, over to Bangalore for 2 months. They came back already super buff, and they were like ready. We immediately promoted them up because now they know, now they've seen it, and now they're like even better than many of the Indian engineers because they got exposed to scalable architecture. That's it. It was that little 2-month session where they could see, oh, that's what it's like, and then they get their own ideas and then they soar. So it's just amazing the impact of sending talent across different economies and different tech hubs.
Dari pendidikan kita ini pasti penting kan, pendidikan. You said right now you started 5 years kan, tapi something has to be done to make it more attractive. You know, maybe dengan perkembangan pesat ini di bidang e-commerce dan online travel, online rides, orang akan lihat ini sebagai career yang lebih menjanjikan, lebih attractive daripada the traditional careers. You know?
Engineering talent will continue to increase, and it's going to become pretty much the highest paid undergraduate probably job in about 4 years, easily the highest paid one. So that will take care of itself. But the supply is the problem, right? The supply, and to do that, you know, when you ask your average coder, it's like, how much did you learn about what you know now in university? They will tell you on average like very little. That they basically in university skipped class and learned this on their own, got access to all the different code bases on open source, and they just cranked it out themselves, them and their friends together, and learned it. So coding, what I've learned about coding from working with engineers, it's a very different learning process that is collaborative, and it's not like you could be in a seminar and just taught. So it's not really focusing on the educational institutions. I think the government should step in and focus on the incentives to enter this market. Like, if you're an engineer, you get tax-free for the first 2 years of coming out of college. Or if you do computer science as a major, you basically get taken, in any institution in Indonesia, it's free, gratis. Okay? Any engineer that wants to move to Indonesia immediately gets a visa. Simple things like that. Like that just create incentives, right? Gojek doesn't train any of its drivers to behave in a certain way. It just incentivizes the drivers to behave in a way that is desirable to the end consumer. We have that view across every industry. The government should probably, what I would recommend is to actually create those financial incentives with which to join so that parents can finally, you know, breathe and say, okay, my kid can do computer science instead of being a lawyer or just a doctor or, you know, your conventional business majors. It just creates a little bit more comfort in their mind to let their kids go and do computer science instead of baking. Because a lot of parents still think coding is like playing games. And I'm not joking. A lot of parents actually still think this. So I just think few simple incentives could actually change the whole macro situation.
Lagi main internet.
Iya.
Main internet.
Oke. Ya, menarik ya. Nah, kalau bicara soal startup nih, tadi di yang presentasi yang Tony sharing bahwa Indonesia nanti akan banyak startup ya, sesuai dengan juga program pemerintah untuk startup ya. Nah, how do you define like the sustainability of startups? Kayak dari Gojek sendiri, mungkin Traveloka sendiri, dan juga Matahari Mall yang secara bisa di corporate. Nah, how do you define sustainability?
Itu pasti dari dulu ya.
Yeah.
Kalau masalah sustainability itu kan tergantung dari berapa revenue dan berapa cost dari startup itu sendiri. Kalau dari sisi revenue kita bicara masalah apakah ada demand atau tidak. Satu dua, apakah ada masalah yang kita solve atau tidak. Apakah ada value yang kita kasih atau tidak. Kalau dari sisi demand harusnya, for example for travel and sama untuk ride hailing and also for e-commerce, I think demands ada and will still be there, if not growing, actually it's growing. Kemudian dari sisi value yang kita kasih itu yang setiap hari kita kerjakan ya. So every day we are working hard to provide the best service and creating the best product for our customers. Kalau dari sisi revenue itu, dari sisi costnya seharusnya kalau dibandingin sama traditional bisnis, harusnya secara costnya digital companies, internet companies punya advantage dari sisi mereka jauh lebih lean dan secara company.
Oh ya?
Ya kalau saya lihat sih sekarang ya startup lagi keren-kerennya gitu kan. Kayaknya kalau kerja di bank atau kerja di consulting aja itu udah nggak sekeren dulu gitu. Sekarang semua pengen jadi apa startup. So it's actually good and bad. I mean the good thing is obvious, you know, it's like the future is one way, right? The future is digital. Everyone is going technology, but it's gonna impact our life in a different way in a different sectors of our life. Gitu. Jadi dari transportasi, dari belanja, dari travel dan lain-lain. Ini fintech lagi hot juga, terus health tech juga, kesehatan juga lagi hot, education tech juga nanti akan hot juga. So the time will come for each and every of the sector. So that's good gitu. Now the not so good things itu jadinya orang itu kadang-kadang itu apa kayak berapa ya? Nggak sampai seminggu yang lalu saya ditanyain sama orang yang mahasiswa belum lulus sekolah, saya mau bikin startup apa ya? That was so random ya. I mean, it's like, so he wants to do startup just because startup is cool, I think. Not because, so I'm asking, so what problem that you're trying to solve? Mau bikin apaan, mau solve problem apa? Itu nggak ada, pengen startup aja pokoknya gitu. So that is actually not healthy. Jadinya malah orang just rushing, and then, nah environmentnya sekarang ini lagi agak-agak terlalu kondusif untuk gitu kan. Jadi
Lebih bagus itu daripada jadi artis sinetron kali ya.
No comment about artis sinetron.
Jason dulu bekas artis soalnya.
Easy for you to say.
Artis.
Jason right?
Itu artis nih kayaknya.
That's right. Jason is famous.
So you know startups, yeah. So out of the 10 startups, it's actually we just stopped with Ghani. So average life-nya itu paling 2 tahun, because let's say 9 of them will fail, if not
That's
more.
right.
Ya, jadi banyak failnya gitu. Itu satu. Terus yang kedua, let's say average kalau misalnya data di US nih, startup founders yang sukses is actually not the fresh graduates. But it's actually the ones who has experience couple of years or then udah kerja di sini dulu, sana dulu.
Yeah.
Baru akhirnya mikirin benar, this is a problem that I can solve. Terus dia solve, terus jadi besar dan sukses gitu. So it's not just randomly, I want to do startup, then go ahead do it, and you can become one of the 10 successful startups gitu. Itu aja sih.
And it's not 9 to 5, like you mentioned last
And it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. So it's like it's all about itu apa? Sweat, tears, and blood. It really is.
Maybe Nadi can share about that.
Nani goes home at 3, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe
We talk about tears and blood now.
maybe everyone can learn. Yeah.
I mean like maybe let me finish the tears and blood. Right? Jadi kalau misalnya sweat, it's all about working hard, yeah. Not only working smart. Smart is a commodity these days.
Yeah.
It's about working hard. Then when I talk about tears, it's actually you will cry. It's oh my God, it's so difficult. Apa kadang-kadang bikinnya susah, cari fundingnya susah, terus cari customer susah, cari partnernya susah. That's tears. Then when I talk about blood, it's actually about ditusuk dari belakang. And it's true. I mean it's real, yeah. I mean it's kalau misalnya kerja di corporate, there's a pyramid, right? It's like structure report apa dan lain-lain. Kalau misalnya di startup, Nadine can talk more about blood, but it really is. It's like teman-teman jelek gitu. Then what can you do? You move on.
Yeah.
You don't go to a lawyer and then try to sue. I mean, it's a waste of money and time. You move on. Yeah.
Yeah, Nadi.
So I completely agree with everything Hadi just said, and I just want to emphasize a few points. Like, you don't go into a startup to make money. This is way too painful to do this to make money. No one that comes into this gig to make money ever makes money. Okay, you go into this gig to solve problems, because I can assure you the pain is so high. Your pain threshold has to be so high that it won't be worth it if all you're seeking for is financial gain. It won't. There's way easier ways of making money, guys. Way easier ways of making money out there. You can flip property in Jakarta and make good cash, So this is the point. Like, as an entrepreneur, I hate these motivators who tell everyone in the world that everyone can be an entrepreneur. Okay, this is the world's biggest lie. Not only is that not true, but not everyone should. There are people that are just as happy not being an entrepreneur. They can join startups, etc. But being an entrepreneur is like I said, it's more pain than anything else. So if you really enjoy pain, then that's a good idea that you're an entrepreneur. Like if you're a little bit sadomasochistic, you like to challenge yourself. A lot of people that like to run or do marathons. Okay, That kind of mentality. If you've ever run a marathon before, I haven't done it. I've never run a marathon, but that kind of mentality is exactly what it's like to I think be an entrepreneur. So it's got to be worth it. So if you're not in it to solve a problem, there's no point. Now to the point about this 90-10, is it 90-10 or 80-20, the success ratio? 90-10, oh man, that's bad. So you go into something that has a 10% chance of success, that's insanity, right? So you gotta be a little bit crazy, I think to do that. But I have a theory that the people who end up in that 10%, it's not necessarily that they're smarter than the rest. It's not necessarily that they're better salesmen or that they're better thinkers or anything. What I've seen so far is a lot of the one thing kind of common that find the people that pass the centaur stage, they just don't give up. Literally, they just don't give up. So a function of success is a mathematical probability of how many times you try again until you hit. Okay? It's a scientific principle. Okay, I failed 3 startups before this, right? I attempted, failed other types of. It's just, I think it's the most undervalued skill set. Not quitting. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I firmly believe this because the number of times that we could have quit as good heck, like there were many times. I'll tell you that, but we just kept going after the break, and I'm sure all the startups reach that point of oh god, it'd be so much of a relief if I just did something else right now.
Well, let's thank you, Dan. Let's take some questions now. Tony, do you want to come up here so we can get some Google-related question? Ada pertanyaan dari teman-teman wartawan, atau kita lanjut aja diskusinya? Ada nggak ada pertanyaan buat siapa saja yang ada di panggung? Ya, Mas Ita.
Halo Bapak-Bapak, I'm Ashita from Digital Indonesia Masa. So I'm going to bring you back to the report. It says that in 10 years, actually what we need to do to reap or grab the opportunity of the 81 billion digital economy is to have this talent, engineering, payment mechanism, internet infrastructure. But I just want to know your opinion. Is it really possible? How optimistic do you think Indonesia can provide you with this, infrastructure, logistics, payments in the next 10 years? Because it seems like it's going to take a long time even to have one policies out. The e-commerce roadmap hasn't even, we are not hearing about e-commerce roadmap ever again since last year. So how optimistic are you? And if I can ask one of you, I know engineers is, you talk about engineers side already, but which one will be the easiest relatively in this, I think 5 templates? And maybe which one will be the hardest to achieve in the next 10 years? Maybe you can put up a slide, please. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So there's the payment. Itu bisa pakai slide itu lagi nggak yang last slide?
Iya, kalau bisa ditampilkan.
Iya, tampilin aja. Yang kedua, hampir yang terakhir sebelum terakhir.
Jadi kan dari hasil riset kita dari 200 billion digital economic opportunity in Southeast Asia, Indonesia is like 81 billion. But in order to get 81 billion, there are 5 things we need to solve. First is about talent, right? Second is payment, and then infrastructure, customer trust. Yeah, not this one. Yeah.
Terus. Well, why don't we, Tony, do you want to just kick it off here, what you think, out of those 5, the easiest, hardest, and just maybe.
So, I think it's a good question. I think we need to investigate it together. And I don't think it's just a simple linear answer either. I think, firstly, if you have a look at the data side of things in terms of how the estimates were made, and then what our level of confidence is around those. So, I think if you look at the way the data set was put together, there was very much an inclusion that this would only include the 4 elements. Okay, so there are going to be not bigger, but there are going to be more contributors to the internet economy than just these 4 elements. Given that these 4 elements will be the major ones, but there are also going to be other areas such as people who are downloading music and entertainment, for example. That's not considered inclusive of this, but they will be also key contributors to the internet economy. So, and I think if you ask anyone on the panel, do they feel that there's an opportunity, a real opportunity, and is it really in our sights to get the market to 81 billion by 2025? I think there would be a resounding yes. I think in terms of where we're going with this, and I think there are people here who are already making steps in some of these areas, such as payments, which I'm sure is close to all of your hearts. But talent and engineering is absolutely, I would say, the biggest challenge here, and I'm inclined to agree with Nadine that for radical problems you need a radical solution, and to really create that knowledge transfer platform across countries for Indonesia would be incredibly rich, and I see that in our own business. We are reasonably good at sharing technical skill sets across within Google and within geographies, and I think that's a great way to go. Are we going to be in a position where we can enable, every single requirement for engineering to be met by 2025? I don't think so. But are we going to be in a position where we're going to be enable businesses to get to that point of financial success? Yes, I do. And they're the 2 points we can control most. And then I guess the last piece that I'll speak on is the access piece. If you go to countries like Vietnam, for example, now, it's probably well known that the adoption and watch time of YouTube in Vietnam is incredible. It's incredible here, but in Vietnam, if you walk into a cafe, they'll hand you your menu and the Wi-Fi password. Right, pretty much everywhere you go, it's free ubiquitous Wi-Fi. And so I think the more we can start to double down on creating many, many more ubiquitous access solutions for Indonesians and make it more accessible and more cost effective, then that's going to really help escalate this and move it much faster.
Yeah.
But
For that, in Vietnam, the top downloaded apps are Wi-Fi search apps.
Yeah.
Very popular in Vietnam.
So going back to the question, right? How confident you are?
Yeah.
The 81 billion. How confident we are on this
Which
point?
one is the most difficult?
Exactly. Which one is most difficult?
Which one is most difficult? I agree with Tony. It's Thailandese, and how confident is actually very confident because we run it, and it's actually I compared the data last year. What we have this data. So far we haven't seen a slowdown. So it actually it's real numbers. And now in terms of government, we are entrepreneurs actually. I mean, it's like whether or not there's a roadmap. You think we care? We work around it. And I mean, we are here to actually solve problems. If there's a wall, either we go jump over it, or walk around it, or duck under it. So or just mindset and break through it. Yeah. So we don't think about barriers. I mean, because if you think about barriers after barriers, I mean, it's always been there, right? And it's actually we are expecting barriers. We are problem solvers. So yeah, that's why we're here.
How about the trust piece, not even the consumer trust piece, or lack of trust? I mean, how much does that factor into your business?
It's a lot. Whether it's something that you can affect, I don't know. I think consumer trust is something that happens organically through competition and trying to be the best service provider there. And then over time, you kind of get it right, and then you build trust. But I don't think there's something that can be done about it. It's a general function of building really easy to use and reliable products. That's basically how you build consumer trust. Sure, fraud cases, etc., deter some people from using their credit card. Does that really deter people from shopping something online? Maybe not. Maybe they just need a different payment option so that there's only a limit to how much they can get ripped off, right? But I think competition will sort that out. The government doesn't need to worry about that. The government does not need to protect consumers in online. Let the market decide who they choose. They're grown-ups, right? Consumers are grown-ups. They will choose which side doesn't steal from them. Right? So that's pretty logical. So it's, I think there are easier ways of solving the consumer trust. I agree. I think the
This one is a little bit, yeah. This
Yeah,
one's
let's
gonna
just change the mic, Nadine. You could change the mic. Yeah.
I think to build on Nadim's point on consumer trust, in e-commerce specifically, is actually, we've seen it around the world. So there's a trend of going, like say, the growing of B2C. Because it's B2C is, it's a real company. It's not just, it's a corporations, and then, there's a return policy, refund policy, and, it's trusted, it's more trusted. So let's say, just to share numbers from China, 08 versus 014. So C2C, customer to customer, used to be 90% of e-commerce in China in 2008. And then in 2014, it went down to only 60%. 55%, yes. So actually, the B2C grows because it's organic shift of consumer trust that there's more B2C, there's a C2C. So people right now shopping maybe still in social medias, and then us, the big players, the trusted brand, the trusted retailers offline coming in online. You can buy the same shoes from PO first or from a retailer who's going online. You'll go to a retailer going online unless you cut down the price so much, but then you might get cheated, right? So that's in our business.
Okay, so Dr. Tony?
Yeah, I've got a question for you guys. There's a lot of talk from this scenario around, what are the challenges for a startup? You guys are no longer startups, right? You guys are now relatively established businesses and well valued and more consistent. But in terms of the 81 billion, we don't just need many more startups. We need you guys to go from, a $700 million valuation to a $7 billion valuation. Equally as important as getting a bigger startup ecosystem. Are there things on this that are not on this board? Are there things that are preventing your businesses to go into the next level of growth that are not being talked about yet that you feel might need to be addressed in order for your businesses to expand to the next level that you need?
And Nadine, you want to start?
I would probably, two things that are not on the screen. Number one is, and this one doesn't apply to me now, but I think it applies to the rest of the industry. None of this would be possible without capital. Lots and lots of capital. Okay, so everything here, the prerequisite is capital, right? Payment mechanisms that are scalable, capital, security. Talent, capital. This all, everything capital. So on this front, even though it's not mentioned here, on this front, this is the one where I'm most optimistic about. And the reason is because no matter what's actually happening on the ground, the foreign perception, the foreign investment perception of Indonesia is basically a slice of China. Okay? This is how they see the world from the demographics and size. So they have numbers in their head which represents about 20% of China currently market cap of tech companies. That's a very big number. It's a very big number. So the effect of that is it's always positive for Indonesian startups. It can have negative consequences because there may be some dumb money, right, that are chasing around bad businesses, which is fine, but that's all part of the game, right? But essentially, I think the ability of capital to come in and how attractive Indonesia is because of the starting base is only going to continue to be strong. Okay? Perception is everything in the investment community. Indonesia's big, it's the next one after India and China, money's going to come in. The other thing that isn't mentioned here is, I think, government, the role of government. So we mentioned about the e-commerce roadmap, essentially. I think e-commerce players, tech players has been basically politely saying many different things that basically means one thing. Less regulation, better for everyone. Okay? So regulation that helps this industry is actually not regulation, it's deregulation. Okay? Deregulation. The beauty about tech is that the market decides always. The market decides. And having that purity, that integrity of a free marketplace is the beauty of why tech companies can rise without paying bribes, without knowing important people, without necessarily being entrenched in part of the old political elite. This is the beauty, this is the democratization of new business because of technology. So if the government comes in and starts putting walls around it, across every vertical, I think, by the way, I'm saying, we've actually been very lucky to have a government that is extremely supportive of the tech industry. I'm going to say that. But as a principle, the regulatory approach should be deregulation as opposed to regulation. That's just my sense.
But wait, let me just see if there's another question.
It's a small question. If you could just help me, maybe for Tony, if you could help me understand how you sort of put the dollar balance to the market sizes. Because I feel like reading different kinds of reports, they are always kind of vastly different to each other. Maybe you can give a little bit more detail on the methodology there.
Okay, so for the methodology, we have our good friend here from Temasek, Ty, maybe you can help with that.
Okay, we could share with you a little bit on methodology for the e-commerce, the way we focus the e-commerce market size. I think first we look at the market size of the retail, the normal retail market, and then let's say we look at the retail market size in 2015, and then we look at the current market size of e-commerce 2015. So that way you get the e-commerce penetration. So that is the first entry point, and then we forecast out the retail market size up until 2025 based on GDP growth for certain country and certain country. The retail growth would be slightly higher than GDP growth, namely Vietnam and the Philippines. So that's the retail market forecast, and then we look at what we call it the benchmark country. For example, we look at, let's say, we compare how, let's say, Vietnam e-commerce would follow the path of, let's say, India 5 years ago. So, and we identify for each country in South Asia, we identify a benchmark country, right? In this particular, Vietnam from 2015 to 2020 would be follow India from 2009 to 2014 based on 9 indicators that we have, because we're using internet penetration, using population below 40. We're also using such as the infrastructure available. So we use that and we identify benchmark country.
Ada lagi? Silakan Bang. Terima kasih.
Dion dari Jakarta Globe. Saya pertanyaan untuk tiga bapak di depan ini. 80 miliar dolar market itu kan untuk Indonesia tahun 2025. Tapi ada 120 miliar dolar lagi yang ada di Singapura, ada di Malaysia, ada di Vietnam, ada di Kamboja. Apa strategi Bapak untuk tap market tersebut? Dan kira-kira paling cepat dalam berapa tahun ke depan kita bisa lihat Gojek di Vietnam itu, Gojek di Kamboja itu sendiri. Terima kasih. Dan kita dari dulu.
Iya, Traveloka sendiri kita sekarang sudah ada di Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapura, Thailand, Vietnam, dan Filipina. Jadi semua negara yang tadi di cover sudah ada, local operations-nya sudah jalan. Jadi kalau di travel sendiri sinerginya lumayan tinggi. Jadi selain market domestik dari setiap negara, ada juga international traveling, Indonesia ke Malaysia, dari Singapura, dari Thailand ke Vietnam, dan lain-lain. Jadi kalau bisa dibilang Kalau dari sisi penetrasi internet dan pertumbuhannya, Indonesia sampai saat ini masih yang paling cepat. Tetapi seperti tadi kita bisa lihat, ada opportunity yang lumayan besar juga di luar. Dan dari internet lokal kita juga sudah melihat ke arah situ.
Kalau Minas ada strategi dulu ya.
Bukan hanya mau di .sg, .my.
Mungkin ya. Tambahan juga, jadi ternyata salah satu learning yang kita dapatkan adalah tidak bisa learning yang kita dapatkan di Indonesia semuanya langsung diterapkan di masing-masing negara, karena masing-masing negara ternyata sangat berbeda. Bisa dibilang mungkin lebih banyak bedanya daripada samanya. Jadi yeah.
So which one is more difficult to expand your product or to launch new product?
Dua-duanya sulit ya pastinya. Tapi kalau dari sisi masuk ke negara baru itu salah satu. Jadi kalau kita lihat tadi semua faktor-faktornya, oh ternyata payment infrastrukturnya berbeda sekali. Oh ternyata infrastrukturnya berbeda sekali. Terus dari sisi consumer trust-nya juga mesti dibangun dari awal, maksudnya walaupun kita bilang we are one of the biggest online company in Indonesia, tapi itu tidak bisa dirasanya sama konsumer di negara-negara.
Buat Matahari Mall?
Ya, Matahari Mall masih belum 1 tahun. So we just launched 9 September 2005. Jadi ini kakak-kakak Traveloka dan Gojek. Jadi kalau untuk Matahari Mall, I think we're powered by Lipo Group, and then as you know, the Lipo Group itu grup terbesar di bisnis retail consumer. Jadi we know our consumers best, which is Indonesian consumers. Jadi untuk sekarang kita fokus, ya masa sih e-commerce di Indonesia yang terbesar asing gitu kan, ya, harus Indonesia. Jadi kita fokus di sana dulu, bikin Indonesia bangga gitu lah. Nanti besok-besok aja nanti lagi.
Sudah bangga Pak, sudah bangga.
With your 550 million new fund.
The regional question is an interesting question. Tapi ini masalahnya, banyak sekali, all due respect, tapi banyak sekali people in the financial industry, even consultants, which I was a little consultant too, like Hadi, they like to label this country called Southeast Asia because it's easier to digest. 600 million population makes it an interesting enough proposition to invest, when there is no such thing as Southeast Asia. There really is no such thing. What you have are independent countries with not only different demographic purchasing patterns, but different, and this is what you were just saying, which I completely agree, different digital consumption patterns. Okay? So not only different normal consumption patterns, different digital consumption patterns. So the replicability, just because, based on a World Bank report, the Philippines kind of looks like Indonesia from a demographic, it doesn't mean that their online economy will behave in the same way. Okay? So all of us here actually have, our competition is global. Okay? Our existential threats are above, so this is not even decacorn. Our existential threats are 100 billion and above companies, or soon to be 100 billion and above companies. So yours already, yeah, mine's getting there. Okay, so that's what we're up against. So you have to think, right? In a war strategy, when you have ammunition, what do? You run out of your benteng and try to pick out an enemy in the open field? Or do you entrench and reinforce your fortress that you know, that you love, where you have the support of the people? So it's quite rational of an approach to think of an only Indonesia thesis. And I think a lot of our investors would love that. And travel is probably a little different. I'm super proud that finally an Indonesian company went outside, so that's awesome. But I think for other us who where winter is coming, right, Hadi? Winter is coming. We need to build our defenses, so stay local. This is a big enough market. Why bother?
Okay, so with the Game of Thrones metaphor here, anyone else have a combative question? Yes.
Good evening. Pakai bahasa Indonesia aja.
Yang disebut nama dari mana?
Ya, saya Krisna dari Harian Kompas. Ini kan ada report dari Temasek sama Google, semuanya mengenai tentang potensi pasar gitu ya. Nah, apakah ada report atau penelitian seberapa besar sih dari potensi pasar itu yang bisa berkontribusi untuk produk domestik bruto kita gitu? Jangan konsumsi terus, tapi seberapa besar itu bisa punya pengaruh besar untuk masyarakat kita, mungkin apakah nanti bisa berapa persen ke PDB atau ke produktivitas masyarakat kita, dampaknya secara ekonomi secara
Itu boleh jawab kayaknya.
oh silakan
Baik, boleh nafsu ya gue. Sekarang gini, siapa bilang bahwa dampak terbaik kepada negara adalah GDP naik? Oh, ini maksudnya who made that assumption gitu? No, but I'm agreeing with you. The productivity of a bangsa is basically what they can produce minus what the cost of what they consume. Yeah, kan? Basically, there's the productivity that is created by technology companies to be able to let you buy something cheaper, faster, especially, has huge, and I'm talking about e-commerce here, I'm not talking about Gojek, I'm talking about e-commerce, has huge impact on your discretionary spending and on your disposable income. Companies like OLX, where you can liquidate any asset that you have and sell it to anyone, okay? So Matahari is more mall marketplace, but so they do that too. Tapi let's look at OLX, which is a pure C2C marketplace. Bayangin, sekarang semua aset lo bisa lo uangin. What does that do to your financial flexibility? And then what does that do to the economy overall? Okay. Transportation in Jakarta has never been cheaper in the history of Jakarta. Has it? Am I right? This is the cheapest time for private transportation ever in Jakarta and soon to be in other cities because of technology. So my argument adalah jangan mengira bahwa konsumsi, efisiensi konsumsi itu tidak berdampak kepada kesejahteraan negara. That's my point. Jangan melihatnya GDP doang, kita produce berapa, kita hire berapa orang. Tech dampaknya bukan kepada employment labor force, itu udah jelas. Tech tuh ngurangin employment labor, bukan nambah ya, itu udah jelas. Jadi ya, kita nggak bisa ngebela tech dari sisi itu. But I'll tell you this, from a consumer consumption side, the efficiency that it creates on everyone's disposable income is exponential, the impact. Semua orang bisa lebih banyak duit, lebih banyak waktu untuk spend time dengan keluarga, untuk pergi ke keluarga sekarang bisa ke KFC instead of just ke warung ke depan, and so on. Gitu. So I want to make that slight point gitu, bahwa itu juga dampaknya sangat positif kepada consumption.
But I think it increases opportunities in other areas that we may not know exist, right? So it's not exactly just reducing the workforce, it's creating different opportunities in different areas, right?
Gojek's a bit of an idiosyncratic example of that. Gojek's the exception because I think we all are somewhat marketplaces, right? Where we're actually empowering people to find an occupation. But not all technology companies are like that, okay? Not all. So technology companies, what I meant, we don't traditionally hire tens of thousands of people like a cigarette company. But we do create opportunities for people to actually earn through a software platform, right? Yeah. But I'm not even talking about the number of drivers that we employ livelihood. Forget about that. Just imagine how much productivity we increase in Jakarta? Just Gojek, in terms of time saved and money saved. And think of the impact of the economy of that. So even on the consumption side, I would argue the benefits are huge because it's consumption efficiency.
Maybe let me add on top is on the producing side, right? On the supply side. Jadi kalau misalnya kan e-commerce kan, so we talk about merchants, right? Marketplace, merchant selling, right? So before lu mesti buka toko physical, mesti renting, dan mau ngembangin toko mau ngembangin bisnis mesti buka di lokasi lain banyak dan lain-lain. And even then it's actually with the cash flow and then the loan, it's a linear growth. Now with e-commerce, you could be someone in Klaten or in Batu or Magelang or whichever city where you produce, and then you have internet connection, you can sell online and sell across Indonesia. That is exponential immediately to the producing. So that's how let's say e-commerce in this case is specifically help exponentially grow the productivity.
Yeah, same thing as well actually for Gojek. I got experience. I like bakmi, but I know the owner. Normally before Gojek actually order per day just like around 200 mangkok. But with Gojek, he said to me that it grows like 3 times, 600 mangkok. Yeah, so it helped also in the to this UKM SMEs as well.
Okay, thanks. Well, so udah mau jam 4 nih. So maybe one last question ya. Saat terakhir ada yang punya pertanyaan yang sangat burning, bagaimana sesuatu. Okay, so does anybody like to add a last comment here? Maybe
I'd like to add to Tony's questions about, let's say, what is not on the page, right? That could help us accelerate or reach that 200 billion, the 81 billion. So I think for Indonesia, specifics is the success stories. So we need the Larry Page of Indonesia, or the Elon Musk of Indonesia, or the Jeff Bezos of Indonesia. So we need those that jadi supaya yang lain bisa ikut dan terinspired to keep going at it, right? Not giving up.
I also like to add. I think we have these programs to put startups through acceleration programs at Google, right? And one thing we need to have more women in looking at this space as well. There have to be good examples of women as a success in this space too. So it's not just 3 guys up here, although you're all very attractive.
Exactly.
But I mean, we need to find a way. I don't know how we do that. Maybe we make a sinetron about female development. I don't know. What do you think? Pak Dani gimana? Kalau perempuan travel apa nggak?
Lumayan banyak di position yang senior juga.
Ya, kalau
So I believe we have more female VPs than men. Yeah. The director level though is only 1 female, which is a shame. But 1 level down, more females than on the VP side. Yeah. So I'm really happy about that.
We have females doing a male's job actually in our company. So for example, our head of operations are actually a mom of 1. Jadi keren banget. Jadi the queen of warehouse. Everyone's mom. So when she goes to warehouse, jadi anak-anaknya itu gede-gede badannya, customer service or distribution guy or the fulfillment guy, kayak yang benar-benar yang di gudang yang angkat-angkat. Terus panggilnya kalau dia datang momski panggilnya.
So maybe the last word, Tony.
No, I think on the women business side, I think two answers. One, within Google, we're working very hard. We're about 50-50 in Indonesia, which is fantastic. But it's reflected on the web. More women using the web. The web needs to have those great ideas as well. And one business I'm just fascinated by is Hitchup.com, and which is led by a fantastically talented and strong leader. And we need more of those kind of landmark businesses to help expand, and Hitchup is expanding beyond borders here as well, which is smart and exciting. We just need more of those businesses to point to attract more businesses more women into this industry.
Okay, listen,
I think that is what need to happen. Like if you want to reach 81 billion in terms of like travel, apart from these 5
So
we believe from the demand side, it will grow. Definitely, it will grow. More people will travel. More people will need rooms to stay. Tapi pertanyaannya gimana cara grab opportunity atau feeling itu, dan di Traveloka kita believe kita bisa, seandainya kita bisa selalu kasih service yang terbaik dan bikin produk yang paling bagus, consumer akan selalu transaksi di Traveloka dan kita akan dapat value.
Great.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you. This is excellent. We could go on for many hours here. I think bisa sampai ke, tapi sudah mau jam 4. So listen, we're going to take some pictures, a few rounds of pictures. We've got a paper airplane here. So that's